I never imagined that a single text message could unravel decades of sacrifice and trust. But there it was, glowing on my screen, burning its cruel message into my soul. You won't be joining us for the holiday retreat. Claire prefers it to be just family. Sent by my son Daniel, my only child. Just months before, I had gifted him and Claire a fully paid home in the outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina. That house had been my life's work. Every overtime shift, every skipped vacation, every dime scraped together as a retired nurse went into that gift. I wanted to secure their future, to give them stability. And now I was no longer considered family enough to join them for a simple getaway. I stared at the message as a quiet storm rose in my chest. I typed one word back. Okay. But inside I was screaming. Screaming at the betrayal, the callousness, the erasure. I thought of the nights I stayed up sewing curtains for that house, of choosing tiles for their kitchen backsplash, of giving them my mother's heirloom dining set. And now I was just an outsider. I made tea but forgot to drink it. The cup sat cooling on the counter untouched, while my thoughts raced. I remembered how Daniel had cried when he moved into his college dorm, how I held him and promised he'd never be alone. I remembered how Claire had smiled sweetly the first time I met her, calling me Mom, before the wedding even happened. It all felt like a lie now. That night, the house seemed colder. I wandered through the rooms, touching the furniture I had chosen, the photographs on the walls, the handmade quilt draped over the back of the couch. Everything whispered memories. But those memories now felt like ghosts. The next morning, I called my oldest friend, Evelyn. She came over without hesitation, carrying a thermos of coffee and a soft look of concern. As she read the text on my phone, her face hardened. "They've been planning this, Grace," she said, using my name like a shield. "They've taken what they wanted, and now they're done with you." I wanted to believe she was wrong. That Claire had manipulated Daniel. That my son, the boy who used to fall asleep in my lap, wouldn't knowingly exclude me. But deep down I knew Evelyn was right. "You need to protect yourself," she said firmly. "This is more than just a slight. Have you checked your accounts lately? Are you still on the deed of the house?" I hadn't. Claire had taken over the finances to make things easier. That phrase echoed in my mind now like a warning I never heard. Evelyn stayed for hours. We sat in silence for most of it, the television murmuring in the background, neither of us really listening. She baked muffins in my kitchen just to keep her hands busy. I appreciated that. "They're not thinking about you anymore, Grace," she said at one point. "They're thinking about what you can still give them. And now that you've given them a house, maybe they think there's nothing left." The words stung, but I knew they were true. Later that evening, I opened a box of old letters. Ones Daniel had written me from summer camp, from college, from his first internship in Charlotte. "Miss you, Mom. Hope you're proud of me." I had kept every single one. I laid them out on the dining room table like a gallery of hope. I read each one. I touched his words. They felt like echoes from another life. One note from when he was 10 said, "If I ever get rich, I'm gonna buy you a big house with a garden, and you won't ever have to do dishes again." Well, Daniel got the house. And now I was left with the dishes. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the recliner with a shawl over my shoulders, the lamp casting long shadows across the room. I watched the sunrise slowly melt the darkness away. Something in me shifted with that morning light. A sense of finality. A flicker of resolve. This wouldn't be the end of my story. Not like this. I stood up, slow but sure, and reached for the folder in my desk drawer. The one labeled important. Inside were copies of the house deed, financial statements, my original will. I began reading. I began preparing. If they thought I would fade quietly into the background, they had another thing coming. And that's when the plan began to form. I didn't waste time. That same morning I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, fed the birds outside my window like I always did, and then sat back down at the kitchen table with that folder in front of me. The sun hadn't even fully risen yet, but I felt more awake than I had in weeks. For the first time in what seemed like forever, I was taking back control, or at least trying to. I started with my bank account. My hands trembled slightly as I typed in my username and password. I hadn't checked it in a long while. Claire had taken over most of the finances with a chirpy, "Don't worry, Mom. Let me handle the boring stuff." I used to think that was kindness. Now I saw it for what it was: insulation. A way to keep me from seeing too much. The numbers on the screen loaded slowly, as if the internet itself knew this would hurt. My savings were lower than I remembered. Significantly lower. I clicked into the statements. It was all there. Regular transfers listed as maintenance costs, household improvements, and reimbursement. But I hadn't approved those expenses. I hadn't even known they existed. And worse, the payment accounts connected to the transfers were under Claire's name. My stomach clenched. Not just from the theft, but from the betrayal it represented. I wasn't just excluded from a vacation. I was being drained systematically, quietly, bled dry by the very people I had spent my life nurturing. That afternoon, Evelyn drove me to our local credit union. I filed a fraud report, closed all shared accounts, and opened new ones under my name only. The bank manager, a kind woman named Tanya, gave me a sympathetic look as she processed the paperwork. "You're not the first to go through this," she said gently. I nodded, holding back tears. Next, I dug out the folder again and called Mr. Halbert, a lawyer Evelyn had used after her own husband passed. He agreed to see me the next morning. That night, sleep didn't come easily. I tossed and turned, haunted by memories that now felt tainted. Daniel's wedding, Christmas dinners, the baby shower I hosted for Claire. Every smile, every thank you now seemed rehearsed, strategic. I woke up with a headache and a heartache, but I showed up at Mr. Halbert's office early. The place smelled like old wood and paper, a comforting scent oddly. A secretary ushered me in. Halbert was an older man, soft-spoken with sharp eyes. I handed him the folder and explained everything. The house, the finances, the exclusion from the family trip. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned forward. "Grace, this is serious. Very serious. You need to revoke any legal powers Claire might have. Do you recall signing anything giving her control over your finances or estate?" I did. I remembered the day clearly. Claire had driven me to the notary, sweet as pie, explaining that it was all to make things smoother should anything happen to me. She even brought me tea that day. I thought it was thoughtful. It was preparation. "I believe we can start with a revocation of power of attorney," Halbert said, his voice steady. "Then we'll work on the house. It may be possible to reverse the gift, depending on how the deed was transferred." I nodded. I didn't hesitate. Do it. All of it. Evelyn picked me up after the appointment. I hadn't told her everything, but she didn't ask questions. She just drove me to her house and poured us both a glass of wine. "You're doing the right thing," she said. I stared out the window at her garden, remembering how Daniel used to run through the sprinklers in our backyard. A different time. A different boy. The next day, Halbert called with updates. The revocation paperwork had been filed. The next step would involve digging into the deed transfer. He advised me to gather every communication I had with Daniel and Claire regarding the house. Every email, every text, every letter. I started printing. And then as I sorted through my emails, I found it. An old message from Claire with the subject, "Just sign and return." Inside was an attachment titled, "Property Streamline Agreement." I opened it. My eyes scanned the text, my heart hammering. It was full power of attorney. Legal authority granted to her. Permanent. Binding. I called Halbert immediately. "Forward it to me," he said, calm but urgent. "We can use this." And just like that, the scope of this betrayal came into full view. Claire hadn't just hoped I'd fade quietly. She had planned to push me out entirely. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a takeover. The morning after forwarding the email to Mr. Halbert, I stood at the kitchen sink watching the wind ripple through the maple tree in my backyard. The leaves danced in the sunlight, golden and red, the kind of sight that used to calm me. Not today. Today my nerves were electric, my thoughts sharp. It was like waking up in someone else's body, someone who had finally decided not to be walked over anymore. Mr. Halbert called shortly before noon. "Grace, I've reviewed the document. It's heavily slanted in Claire's favor, but we can contest it. I've already drafted the revocation documents. You just need to come in and sign." By 2 p.m., I had signed away Claire's access. Her financial leash had been cut. Halbert made sure to notify the institutions involved. We contacted the bank, the investment firm, Even the utilities where Claire had once insisted on setting up online management for convenience. It felt like exhaling after holding my breath for years. But that wasn't enough. I needed answers and proof. Evelyn was the one who suggested the private investigator. He found my sister's missing pension in 2 weeks, she said, and caught her son-in-law stealing from her safe. She handed me his card. Marcus Fielding. Discreet. Thorough. Professional. Marcus came to my house that same evening. He was in his mid-40s. With a calm demeanor and a notebook he seemed to write in constantly. I told him everything while he nodded, asked precise questions, and then said simply, "I'll need access to your online accounts, any financial records you can spare, and a list of recent transactions you didn't authorize." I gave him everything. By the end of the week, Marcus returned with a folder that felt heavier than its weight. "Claire's been siphoning money steadily for nearly 18 months, he said. "Small amounts just below the radar. She also listed your house as collateral for a second mortgage she's trying to secure. The application was filed last week." My mouth went dry. I reached for the armrest of my chair, gripping it as if I might float away otherwise. "She never even told Daniel," Marcus continued. "All the documentation lists her as primary, but your signatures, they're digital forgeries. Sloppily done, but just enough to hold if no one looked too closely." "And Daniel?" I asked. "Does he know?" Marcus hesitated. "It's hard to tell. Either he's painfully naive or willfully ignorant. But from the way the finances are structured, everything benefits her. Not him. He's just along for the ride." The next day, I sat with Evelyn on her porch swing, the evening sun spilling across our laps. I told her everything Marcus had found. She didn't say much, just reached over and squeezed my hand. "That house," I said quietly, "was supposed to be a new beginning for them, and now it's become the scene of a crime." Evelyn nodded. "That's because they never saw it as a gift. They saw it as a down payment on control." We spent the next 2 days preparing. Halbert filed an emergency freeze on all shared authorizations. Marcus began pulling deeper records, emails, financial trails, call logs. Every stone turned revealed more rot. Claire had used my identity to open a private credit line. She'd funneled retirement money into a brokerage account under her maiden name. She even registered a shell company to write fake home repair invoices, billed to me. It was a long con. I sat by the fireplace that evening with my old journal in my lap. I flipped back through entries from years ago. Birthdays. Notes about Daniel's job search. Memories of baby Eleanor, their daughter, my granddaughter. I couldn't see those memories the same way anymore. They were tinted now. Damaged. But I didn't cry. Not anymore. I turned to a blank page and began a new entry. They tried to erase me while I was still alive, but I am writing myself back in. The morning air was crisp when I stepped out of my cottage, scarf wrapped tight, the file folder tucked under my arm. I didn't drive directly to the house I had given them, no. I parked 2 blocks away and walked, letting each step ground me, letting the cold remind me I was still in control of my body, my mind, my future. Their car was in the driveway. Daniel's familiar SUV. Claire's white luxury sedan with its spotless rims. And now a new sign for sale. A clean white post, planted in the front yard with a polished smile printed on it, the face of the realtor I had hired. Daniel stepped out first, his mouth hanging open. "Mom? What? What is this?" Claire came out seconds later holding her phone. "Who authorized this? You can't do this. This is our home." "No," I said, calmly but firmly. "It was mine, and legally it is again." I handed Daniel the thick folder. His fingers trembled as he flipped through. Legal documents, title reversals, fraud reports, bank statements, all of it meticulously prepared. Claire reached for the folder and yanked it from his grip. Her face turned crimson. "This won't hold up. You're manipulating the law. This is elder abuse." "What you did," I said, stepping closer, my voice cool and clear, "was elder abuse. This is justice." She fumed. "Daniel, say something. She's ruining everything." But Daniel just stared at the documents. His jaw clenched, eyes scanning the evidence. A deep shame began to settle in his posture. "We have rights." Claire snapped again. You can't just cut us off. You forfeited your rights when you forged my name, drained my accounts, and planned to sell what wasn't yours. She opened her mouth again, but I lifted a hand. Enough. I've said what I came to say. The house is sold. The documents are filed. The accounts are locked. There's nothing left here for either of you. Daniel looked up at me, eyes wet. Mom. I didn't know she was doing this. I swear. I stared at him. You knew something. You had to, but you chose comfort over conscience. I turned and walked away, back down the street where I had parked. Behind me, Claire was shouting into her phone, no doubt trying to call a lawyer, a friend, someone who might still help her keep the illusion alive. It was over. That afternoon, I sat in Halbert's office. They'll push back, he warned. Let them, I said. Every move they make will only prove my case further. Marcus entered with a final envelope. More records, he said. Claire's shell company is registered to a P.O. box connected to her cousin. There's a full money trail. I nodded. Then we bury them in it. That night, I returned home to a quiet evening. No phone calls. No threats. Just peace. I poured a glass of wine and sat by the fireplace. I had weathered their storm, and I was still standing. The sale of the house finalized within a week. Shocked even me. A young couple with 2 small kids had made a full cash offer. They had walked through the property the day after my confrontation with Daniel and Claire, unaware of the emotional residue in the walls. They loved it, said it felt like home. They had no idea the battles that had been fought under that roof. I didn't tell them. Some ghosts don't need to be passed on. The funds landed in my new personal account on a crisp Friday morning. I watched the notification appear on my phone with a mixture of relief and disbelief. It was done. Everything they thought they had secured was now gone legally, irrevocably. That afternoon, Daniel called. I let it ring. He called again. Then Claire. I turned off the phone. Instead, I baked. I hadn't baked in years. The scent of warm cinnamon filled the kitchen. I listened to records, opened the windows, and let the wind carry out the sadness. Evelyn came by that evening. I handed her a slice of coffee cake and we sat on the porch as the sun dipped below the hills. They're probably panicking, she said. Let them, I replied. 2 days later, a letter arrived. Handwritten. From Daniel. Mom, I know I let you down. I didn't know the extent of what Claire was doing. I should have asked questions. I should have protected you. I'm sorry. He ended the letter with a plea to meet, to talk, to find a way back. I didn't respond, because here's what I realized. Forgiveness isn't owed, it's earned, and he hadn't earned it yet. The next week, I closed the account Claire had once controlled. I shredded the last of the old paperwork. I donated most of the furniture I had bought for their house. It wasn't mine anymore, and I didn't want their energy following me. I kept one thing, the rocking chair from the nursery. The one Daniel had been rocked in as a baby. It still creaked in the same spot. I set it on my porch. Let it watch the world go by. I found a small cottage just outside Black Mountain. 2 bedrooms, a fireplace, and a garden that was already blooming with wild roses. The previous owner had left behind a pair of ceramic bluebirds on the kitchen windowsill. They felt like a blessing. I planted daffodils and rosemary. I hung new curtains. I framed photos of me with friends, not family. I filled the bookshelves with novels I never had time to read. Peace isn't something that arrives loudly. It creeps in on quiet mornings and unhurried afternoons. It settles in your bones when you stop waiting for someone to apologize. Every once in a while, I'd glance at my phone and see a missed call from Daniel. I never answered, not because I hated him, but because I finally loved myself enough to say, not today, not anymore. Evelyn helped me furnish the cottage. She brought over quilts, her favorite tea set, and laughter. So much laughter. This feels like college again, she joked one evening. It feels like freedom, I said. And it did. I updated my will. Everything I had, savings, investments, and the proceeds from the house, would go to causes I believed in. Women's shelters, nursing scholarships, and a foundation for elder care reform. Daniel and Claire were written out completely. No ceremony. No explanations. They took enough. A week later, Daniel showed up at the gate of my new cottage. I had used part of the house sale proceeds to purchase this place. A quiet home just outside Black Mountain, surrounded by trees and peace. I watched from the window as he hesitated, holding a grocery bag. He stood there for 10 minutes, shifting from foot to foot. At one point he looked up, almost raised his hand to knock, but didn't. Then he left. I didn't open the door. This isn't about revenge. It's about self-respect. About reclaiming the years I lost believing I had to earn love with sacrifice. Now I wake up without dread. I walk my garden barefoot. I bake muffins and read late into the night. Evelyn visits as always on Tuesdays. We drink tea and talk about anything but the past. This is peace. And peace is enough.